People don't realize like how many iterations your script is going to go through before it ever makes it to the screen. Like by the time it actually like makes it to screen, it's going to have gone through so many different drafts from so many different people, you know, budgetary reasons, you know, producer reasons, creative differences. And so it's important to know when to stand your ground, like we were saying, but also to realize that this is a collaborative process.
Yeah. Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the About Story podcast. My name is Nathan Johnson, and today I'm here with Anthony and Kaylah. Welcome to the show, guys. Thanks so much for being here.
What's going on, man? Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. Really excited and looking forward to our discussion. So yeah, how did you guys kind of get started?
You know, honestly, for me, it just goes back to when I was a kid and just being fascinated with movies for as far back as I can remember. Just getting a heavy dose of Westerns and 80s and 90s action flicks, you know, from the time I was young, and just really, really loving just stories about heroes and, you know, good and evil. And then coming around to a place eventually where I realized, like, somebody has to create these. Like, you know, I feel like when we're young, we're so used to just thinking about it like, oh, it's like just the actor, you know, it's all about the person on screen, but somebody has to put these kind of stories together. And in particular for me, I grew up watching a lot of Westerns, and you know, if you look at like John Wayne Westerns and stuff, there's such a simple divide between good and evil. Like, he's always the good guy, you know, and there's always the corrupt sheriff or like the land baron or whatever. And then getting into like Clint Eastwood movies and the Dollar Trilogy, and where it's like a lot more convoluted because he always plays anti-heroes, you know. He's the bounty hunter or he's the hitman or whatever, and he's not a straight good guy. And just being really fascinated by like the archetypes of like good and evil really kind of got me thinking about actually like creating my own stories.
Yeah, it's really freeing, I think, to me personally. Like when I have like an idea and I can get this idea out there, and you see things come alive in a different way, and it's just, I don't know, I feel like we're all like very creative, and it's a creative expression to be able to get that out there and yeah, tell your story to the world. So
absolutely.
How about you, Kaylah? What was your journey like?
You know, it's really funny. It's kind of similar to Anthony, where, you know, I just grew up loving movies and stories. But I used to think, how do people come up with these stories? That was my thing, is like, how do they do it? And then one time in high school, I remember that we were challenged to write a story in the form of a poem. And for some reason, it was like the most excited I was ever about homework, right? So yeah, when I started doing that poem, I just wrote like this, you know, fantastical piece of like, you know, a knight fighting a dragon and all this stuff. And at the very end, there was this part where the knight brings back a box to the king, and the king opens it, and there's a key inside. And that's the way I ended the poem. And I remember everybody in my class like freaking out. They were like, what is the key go to, you know? And it was the first time that I realized, like, oh, I can really like do this. I can write stories, you know, I can affect like impact people, you know, with stories. So I think that's kind of like the first thing that started me on this journey.
So you guys went to school, right? You went to Biola University. It's actually where we met.
Yeah.
Many moons ago.
Yes.
Yeah, it's crazy the difference between like school life and then like actually working in the real world.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like school, in a lot of ways, it prepares you, but in a lot of ways, it's like, how do you get prepared for that? You know, because it's completely different.
Yeah, it's kind of like learning how to swim outside of water, and then you're put in the water, and you're like, oh, gosh, they taught me about this. What do I do?
I watched a YouTube video on how to swim. This is not what it's like. They didn't mention this at all, you know, like in my comm studies class. Like,
exactly. So what's it been like for you guys? I know, like, what's the process been for you guys?
I mean, it's been a process. It's been a lot, yeah. I mean, this town is wild, and I think everybody kind of has their own journey, and you really don't know what you know until you know it, you know, and you don't know how much you don't know until you actually get out there, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is not what we thought, you know, it was going to be like. I think we all kind of have this naive, kind of shiny, golden vision, like of LA and Hollywood and the industry, like in our minds, and it's like, I just got to find that one person, you know, once they see this script, man, it's going to change everything, you know.
Yeah.
And so I know, like, for us starting out in particular, like, it was hard. I mean, it still is in a lot of ways, but especially when you're first starting out and we were fortunate that we had at least a couple of friends who got here before us, and one of them, got me a job working at a talent agency kind of right away, which was like my intro, into the business and that side of things in the world. And then, as we started writing and developing, and then obviously came up with our idea for Writer Spotlight, and that became, a whole other thing. But it's been a long journey.
Yeah, I would just say that's been very, very difficult. And for people who aren't, if you're not called or you don't have a passion, you're gonna leave. You're gonna give up.
Burned out, yeah.
Yeah, because it's kind of like we've had those moments, but we always like say to each other, but we're supposed to be here, Yeah.
I don't know why you would want to be here, like if you weren't, and I really don't want to disillusion people like on the industry, because there are some amazing things about it, and it can be a lot of fun and really exciting, but you need to know why you're here. And it needs to be bigger than just like fame and fortune.
Because that's very fleeting, and even if you make it, that's not going to satisfy you.
No.
You have to have something deeper than that.
Exactly.
So you guys work together on your scripts most of the time, right? So that's interesting. Like I haven't talked to anyone who's like a couple, like you guys are together and your work. How does that work out where you guys are like working on scripts together and like you can't escape each other? You can't like go home. It's like, how does that?
I mean, it's a good thing we like each other.
Right. Yeah. It's a good thing that we.
But yeah, I would say we have to separate work from our relationship. And sometimes that's harder said than done, but
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely one of those things for us where like when we met in college, we had both been writing already, like I'd been writing my own stuff my own way, and she'd been kind of writing her own stuff. And that was actually one of the things we bonded over, was when we kind of started reading each other's work and realized, we actually have similar kind of voices and similar kind of goals. We like a lot of the same, kind of movies and TV shows and stuff, and just kind of figuring out how to meld those two voices together, taking our strengths and weaknesses and just kind of really like creating one voice together. And yeah, I mean, and like Kaylah was saying, it's important to be able to separate, especially like, she works from home, primarily, and I work from home a lot too, if I'm not on set or whatever. And so it's when you spend a whole day, in work, and then you're going to write, and then all of a sudden it's like 7 o'clock, and it's like, okay, what are we doing? Are we still working? Are we done? And it takes time to be able to learn, to be able to like
find that balance,
kind of separate those things.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is great though, honestly. I mean, I can't imagine writing with anybody else, because then you have to just worry about, what are we gonna do on a Zoom call? We're gonna get together, like we have to drive somewhere, or I'm gonna send you a page, you're gonna send me back a page. I know a lot of people do it and have done it for years successfully, but I can't imagine doing it any other way at this point.
Yeah. That's a good segue. I would love to talk a little bit about your approach to writing. Like, how do you guys outline first? Like, what's your, like, when you're developing a story, like, how do you do that?
Well, the first thing that we do is we talk about it. I mean, it's nice to have a co-writer, because you can just discuss it with one another. You can bounce ideas off of each other and kind of say, oh, does this work? Does this work? So I think that's definitely the beginning.
Well, it usually starts with an idea from you.
Yeah.
That's if we're being completely honest. It's like 95% of our ideas that we come up with come out of her mind, which is great.
It depends on the script, how much outlining we do. Like, we always have at least like a basic outline, like what's going to happen in the beginning, middle, and end kind of aspect. But there's certain projects that require in-depth outlining.
Yeah.
So when it's that, it takes us a while to get the outline done, and then we're ready to write.
Yeah. You guys were telling me about the mystery script that you're working on, right?
Yeah. That one took a lot of in-depth outlining.
Yeah, that was a whole different prospect. I mean, we've been writing primarily comedy for the last couple of years, and just really working on like our sitcom specs, and we've written a couple of rom-com features, which have gotten some good feedback and some good exposure and stuff. And then we, again, Kaylah had this great idea a long time ago, to write this mystery thriller, like kind of a limited series kind of thing, set in a small town in the 50s. And so when we finally got around to writing it, we outlined it a little bit, but then we got kind of midway through the pilot, and we're like, we have no idea where this is going. Like, you can't write dialogue for something where you don't know where it's leading. And so we basically had to go back and just do a page 1 outline and figure out how many episodes it was going to be and outline to the very end of it. So like now when we wrote the pilot, the conversation the characters are having, it actually means something now, and it will pay off like later. And that was a completely new exercise for us.
Yeah, I think for me, I know the approach to writing is usually like I start with characters first and figure out. I think it kind of depends on the story too, because if you're doing more of like a drama, then I think doing characters first is great. But if you're doing more plot heavy story, then you want to start with your plot, and then you figure out, okay, who's my main character, and then the other characters are like, how do I build on that and influence the story and like their relationships. And so I think different people obviously have different approaches to kind of what they focus on. And I think you also want to lean into your strengths too, because different writers, some people are really like plot heavy. I would think of like Christopher Nolan or someone like that, where it's like his plots are like really tight and on point. And I'm sure he leads with his plots, like that's like the focal piece of his scripts. But then you have other writers that are more just character-based writers,
right? And
it's just a different perspective on it.
Well, and that's kind of what's cool, like what's been cool about our writing journey together over the years is like Kaylah's really good at plot and like structure, and like world, and I'm a little bit better at like character and dialogue, and so
it's a great combination.
When those two things kind of come together, and so it's like I've learned so much from her about creating plot, like and about like the intricacies like of writing, and then when we get in there, it's like, I'll start spitting off dialogue, and like just talking and like, just kind of trying to figure it out. And it's been really cool seeing the way they kind of meld together. And so much of like those early conversations we have is just figuring out if an idea has legs, figuring out if it's beyond just kind of, is it just a cool concept, or like, is there something there that like, we can actually kind of run with? And that's kind of when it gets fun, is when you realize, oh wait, there is something here, like this has got some depth to it.
Yeah. Do you guys read your scripts to other people, or do you guys normally just kind of bounce it against each other? Like, how do you get feedback, I guess?
Yeah, well, so one of the things is that we always reread our scripts first, because obviously we want to like make sure it's ready for other people to read. But yeah, no, we share our scripts with several people all the time.
Yeah, all the time.
It's actually what we do with our website, so yeah.
That's great. Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Yeah. So you guys started Spotlight pretty recently, and I know it was a big process to get it even off the ground. Yeah,
it's been 6 years of like pouring like passion and love into this. It's been a passion project of mine for a very long time, because I just I've seen how hard it is for writers starting out in this business, and I want to see writers thrive. And so that's kind of where the concept started from. Is to see writers that aren't known, that are aspiring to be successful in this industry.
And maybe describe a little bit. Not everybody might not know what it is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Do you want to take it?
Sure. Yeah. So it's a website called Writer Spotlight, and I mean, essentially what it is it's part writing community. It's part actual real practical writing tools. And the idea is just to have other writers connect with each other, so there's a social media aspect to it, where you create a profile and you go on there and, you list your accomplishments and biography and stuff like that. And then you can meet other writers. You can create writers groups on there. You can join a writers group. You swap scripts with each other, give each other feedback, and get your script to a point where it's actually ready to be read by industry pros, and we've read so many scripts or ran into so many people in the years, especially even ourselves back when we were starting out, where people have one script and they think that it's the greatest thing ever, and it's like, then you read it and it's like, wow, dude, nobody's read this but like your mom, or like maybe your roommate who's like not even in the industry. And so it just really, honestly, it came from a place of really just wanting to encourage writers to be great, like to strive for excellence, but also to work with community within community with each other, as opposed to just competing, with each other all the time. And I mean,
or being like the lone wolf, which I feel like comes up sometimes, where like feel like writers feel like they have to do it all by themselves, and they're not comfortable sharing their work with other people because it's too personal, or like, I don't want to be hurt. They're so close to it, But I think when you're in an environment where it's a safe place to share and get positive feedback, and like, because you really need that. You need to have critiquing and on your work. You're not going to get better.
Yeah.
Otherwise.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that was, one of the things we did is we created a new in-document note, system where you can leave notes directly on the page, right? So like, as you're going, kind of stream of consciousness or whatever, oh, hey, I laughed here, blah, blah, blah. And it's just got a lot of really great tools on there that we were like, man, why doesn't this exist? Like it was what we wish we had when we were starting out. And now that we're further along and it's launched, we still wish we had it. Like, we're glad it's here, And then the other big part of it is then we have industry pros on the sites, producers and development executives who are actively looking for scripts. And so we've given writers a direct pipeline to then get their scripts read once they're ready. Once you've gone through that feedback process, once you've done a couple of rewrites and gotten at that point where other people on the site are like, yo, this is really good. And you can get a recommendation, from fellow writers or from industry pros. And then when you put it over on the pro site, it filters directly to them based on what they're looking for.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. That's such a great idea and concept. And yeah, just having that community is so important. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you guys are doing great work. Yeah.
Thank you. We appreciate
We're
trying. What's been maybe one of the most challenging aspects of getting it up and running and off the ground?
One of the most challenging is actually finding good scripts. And if anybody's listening that's on Writer Spotlight, I'm not saying you don't have good scripts, but it's just when certain pros are looking for certain stuff and we're like, oh, there's nothing like that on here. And we're like, okay, we need more writers. Where are you guys at? We need some of those writers to, sign up. That's been one of the most challenged things is that we have these pros that are looking for specific things. And if it's not on there, we're like, okay, we need somebody to sign up that has this. So
do you kind of encourage people to take a certain genre or a certain type of script, or is it more just oh, whatever script you're working on, we'll help you develop it? Or is well, in the industry we're looking, people are this type of story is really hot right now. Yeah.
One of the things we encourage is we actually have unlimited script uploads. So we encourage you upload everything you have because, anything that you want to work on, right? Or that is ready. So we want to encourage people to, upload everything so that they can work on everything and improve it, and also show these pros if the pro looks at someone's profile and is like, oh, you've written 15 scripts. Oh, you actually have been doing this for a while. But as for specific genre and stuff, that just depends on what the pro is looking for. We try to let people know what pros are looking for on the site so that way they know if they have something. But we only encourage them to put their best work in pro scripts because you really only have one chance. If a pro starts reading your script and it's not good, they're not going to look at your stuff again.
Yeah,
so.
The first page too.
Oh my God.
A lot of them are the first 5 pages, if it's not interesting to them, they're out.
Yeah.
And I think you have to know what you're good at. As a writer, I think you have to define, it's so important to define your own voice and to sound unique and to be different than other people that are out there and to know what genres you like. What are the couple of genres that you're really good at? I'm not gonna suggest that somebody who primarily writes sitcoms goes out and tries to do a World War II historical piece, unless they want to. But I don't think people should chase trends like that. I think you should stick with what you're good at, and when you get good at it, people are gonna notice. Yeah. And they're gonna want to read. They're gonna want to know what else you have.
Yeah.
So what do you guys write most of the time? I know you do comedy.
I would say that our most developed area is TV pilots for sitcoms. That's probably what we're best at. But we do like writing specifically romantic comedies. We've been working on a Christmas movie recently. That we're excited about. But I would say that's our most developed script.
Yeah, I think it's there. I think just because we watch so much TV, we watch so many sitcoms, it's probably the area that we feel like we're the strongest in, the most well versed in.
Yeah.
At the moment, and we've got our voice pretty well defined when it comes to that, and so we feel like when we have a good idea, we're able to execute it and figure it out, pretty well at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you guys actually approach the writing itself? Do you have the story beats? I'm a big fan of Save the Cat, so it's finding those story beats and learning a structure for the story. And I don't think you always have to follow a specific structure, but I think it can be helpful, especially if you're struggling in an area where you're okay, I'm not sure why is this part not working. It's always helpful to kind of look back and say, okay, well, you're missing this arc here, you're missing the change. And
right.
I think that we're more we follow, specifically for TV, we were once told by a showrunner that he said, one of the most important things are your act outs. Do you have a button that really makes people want to keep watching?
You're talking about the end of the episode, right? Or
no,
or
I'm
the end
talking
of the
about
scene.
The end of
each act.
Okay, act, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, the act out. Because originally it was for commercials. We don't necessarily have that as much anymore with streaming, but basically with that, it keeps the story moving forward. If you keep having like a either shocking or exciting or really funny end to an act, it kind of keeps the movie, like the story going. So that's kind of our main focus, I would say, with television. For features,
each act kind of needs to, it's almost like it's its own kind of short story. Like there needs to be an arc within, that first act that then makes you want to, oh my gosh, how's the character gonna get out of this, or they just made this mess, how are they gonna fix it, and then that's what kind of leads you into the next thing, part of it, and would keep you coming back after the commercials if there were commercials. Right. So
yeah.
Sorry, you were saying about features.
Yeah, I think for features, we would probably follow a little more traditional, like the writer's journey. Yeah.
Do you guys have any shows that you really like or movies? What are some of your favorites?
How much time do we have?
I know, right?
It depends.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a better question. What are some of that influenced you the most? Like you see it has influenced your own writing the most?
I mean, like I said, I grew up on Westerns and 80s, 90s action movies and stuff like that. And so, I would say, everything from, Tombstone to Rio Bravo to, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. Just so many things about, those Westerns that I love, and just the iconic characters and, the dialogue, even more modern day things, like, not more modern day, but, more 90s stuff like The Quick and the Dead. And like, there's such a just old school kind of like heroic, just feeling built, like into those. And so then like, for myself, and then just, watching a lot of movies and stuff, is like, I love watching and I love reading, like action films and stuff from like the 80s, you know, and just seeing the way that they created this, like scripts for like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon and stuff, and seeing how much of like that great stuff that we love and we're so used to seeing, like how much of it's on the page, and being like, wow, this is really cool the way they created this.
So that helped with comedy. I'm just kidding.
A little bit, actually. Yeah, some of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say for me, Mel Brooks, basically all of his films. Yeah, I feel like he's hilarious, and so that helped with comedy. As for like, there's a ton of sitcoms. Like there's the greats like Frasier. I love Scrubs. And that's an influence for one of ours. We're literally writing one right now that's kind of Scrubs set in a gym.
Okay, nice.
Yeah, so, just kind of blending that humor and stuff. So, yeah and Community.
Community. Community is probably like our favorite. Yeah, Happy Endings is another big one. Parks and Rec, like just very irreverent comedy, very witty. Just like good banter, and we like farcical without being like spoof. And so like taking situations and kind of, making fun of it and poking fun out of it, but like not segueing so far into like, this is just dumb, like humor at this point. Like, I would say film wise, like Tropic Thunder is a perfect example. That's a masterpiece in my opinion of like.
Versus I would say Spy.
Yeah.
Spy's mine with Melissa McCarthy.
Absolutely.
I know for me, like a lot of people need help, I think, with their process because they get kind of lost in the details. I don't know. It's like, they're looking at the blank page and they're wondering, okay, what do I do next? How do I write this? And then they get stuck. And I think a lot of writers actually don't end up writing because they get, they get writer's block, or they get, discouraged, or it's just not working. Do you guys have like any advice that you give to writers when they're struggling like that?
So I know it sounds unhelpful to tell writers that are struggling with writer's block to write. But I think that, I'm a recovering perfectionist. And I think that's usually what happens with writer's block is you're just so afraid that what you're going to put on the page isn't going to be good. And the truth is it's not. It's not going to be good the first time around. We've experienced that several times with our scripts because, you learn in, screenwriting class that it's all about the rewrite. That would be my number one, like, encouragement is just to do it. And then I think the second thing is have a writer's group. I think if you're in a writer's group, or at least an accountability partner with writing, it forces you to get pages to them. And I really think that when you're forced to get pages to somebody, you come up with creative ideas. You, like, get more inspired. Because if, we just sit down and we're like, oh, we're just going to write anything, it might take us forever. But if we know that we have to have our next act to our writers group by Sunday. Anthony and I are like, we just have to do it. We have to do it. We've found that we get great pages out of that. Because we're just like, we have to do it. We have to write it.
Well, and then there's that feedback that's there waiting for you.
Yeah.
Like, so you're getting feedback, and then it helps you with your rewrite. Like, if there's anything that you weren't sure about, here you've got 3 or 4 people who are constantly giving you feedback. And the other thing I think a lot of people don't talk about is how much giving feedback makes you a better writer.
Yeah.
Because you can't give good notes if you don't understand story.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really matter. It helps if you're reading a script or something that like you're interested in, or it's a genre that you know. But honestly, like, story is story. You know, like if you understand characters, if you know character motivations, if you understand like what makes a story good and makes you as a reader want to turn the page, and if you can articulate that back to the writer, you're going to realize that you're becoming a better writer through giving people that feedback. And I think back to what Kaylah was saying about writing bad first drafts. I mean, you can't rewrite a blank page. You can't rewrite nothing.
You can't fix it.
And I think you can't. And I think a lot of writers are so terrified to just not be good. And it's like, guys, like it's going to be bad in the beginning. It's going to be bad in the beginning, but you have to get that first draft out there before you can even think about, you know, what the end product is going to be like.
Yeah.
Oh,
and there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like your script, even if it is good. You know, I mean, think about all the movies that we see that come out that people still will tear apart, ones that we love, you know. So you're always going to have that. So you kind of have to learn to be able to handle that rejection, you know?
What kinds of advice do you give for people like accepting critiques in some areas, but like not in others? Because like you were saying, it's like sometimes it's a good critique, but it's like, well, maybe it's not the right for this story, or maybe it's not a bad critique. How do you kind of differentiate good critiques from bad critiques?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, you definitely need to be humble when it comes to being a screenwriter, and you need to understand that you're going to get notes and that your story's not perfect, especially in those early stages. So I think so much of it is opening yourself up to those critiques, right? And being willing to accept them, and to know that, like, look, just because the person is being direct with you or maybe being harsh doesn't mean they're being mean. Like, they're not taking a shot at you as a human being. You know, it's nothing about you, like, as a person. And so there definitely needs to be some, you know, you kind of develop thick skin over the years there, and there needs to be humility in there. But at the same time, I mean, nobody knows your story better than you. And so you need to be confident in what it is about your story that works, you know, and what makes your story your story. And so I think if you're getting the same note from 4 or 5 different people, you probably better change it. There's probably something that's going on. But if there's one odd person that critiques something that, if you were to change it, it would change the whole flow, or it would change the whole just kind of like the vibe of what makes your story unique, then you need to be confident in being like, you know what, okay, like, I appreciate that, but it's okay. Like, I know what this needs.
Yeah, I think that it's just whatever makes your story more what it needs to be. You know, that's the notes that you need to accept. You know, if you're writing a comedy and somebody tells you to do something and it's going to make it funnier, then you should pay attention. You know, if it's an action movie and it's going to make it more exciting, then you should pay attention, you know. But yeah, it's kind of like what Anthony said, though, as well, is like, you should stand your ground if it's something that really is important to your story. You know, there's been many people throughout history of screenwriting that have been told things that if they listened, it wouldn't be the movie that won an Oscar, or, you know, that kind of stuff. So sometimes you have to stand your ground, but yeah, I think it also depends on who's saying it as well. Not that you shouldn't listen to other writers, because you definitely should. You know, you should even listen to your mom if she has a good idea, right?
Always listen to your mom.
Yeah, exactly. But if it's like a producer that's interested in your script, I mean, you might want to listen. Yeah. You know, that actually just happened with us recently. We had someone that's interested in trying to sell our script, and so she told us to change something that I didn't want to change, but I'm like, you know what? If it can sell, then why not? Yeah,
it's tricky because sometimes you have to get your ego out of the way. And it's hard because, you know, writing is very personal. And you know, you spend sometimes years working on a script, and then you have to, like, give it up, and it's like, and it gets trashed and cut up, and you're just like, no!
And I also think that, like, I also think people don't realize, like, how many iterations your script is going to go through before it ever makes it to the screen. Like by the time it actually like makes it to screen, it's going to have gone through so many different drafts from so many different people, you know, budgetary reasons, you know, producer reasons, creative differences. And so you better learn to like get along with people, you know, like you better learn to like, you know, to play nice and to be able to accept, you know, it's important to know when to stand your ground, like we were saying, but also to realize that this is a collaborative process.
Yeah. Which I think is awesome. Like I love the collaborative process. You know, I think it makes it so much more fun and engaging when you can actually work, even like you guys working together. Like it wouldn't be the same if you were just working by yourself, writing by yourself, you know, like it would be a little lonelier, you know, like so I think appreciating and embracing the collaborative process, I think, is really important.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, and something, you know, we've done before is like to do a table read, like read your script out loud, like not just to each other, but have. I mean, we live in LA. We all have 100 actor friends, you know. So it's like get your friends together, aspiring actors, you know, get them together and have them read it out loud. It's amazing what it does when you actually kind of get that dialogue out of your head and see the way that people interpret it. You know, see the way that people are reading your action lines, and are they understanding how that correlates into the dialogue and the way they're supposed to say it and the nuance of it, or are they reading something being confused? Like, you know, are the actors able to pick up on the cues that you left in there? I think it's extremely important.
Yeah. That's an interesting note. I think talking about kind of like how specific certain actions should be in your scripts, because I know some scripts they're very like you know, like the character stands up, they look right, then they look left, and then it's like, okay, that's probably too much. But you want to give the actor enough to kind of for them to get a feel of what the character is, but I don't think you want to tell the actor what to do necessarily. And I think finding that balance, I think, is key.
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely.
Do you guys have like any final thoughts or before we wrap this up?
I think read lots of scripts, give each other feedback, and I think learn the rules of writing before you try to break them.
That's good.
We see a lot of writers out there who you can tell are younger, and they're trying to write like Tarantino or Shane Black or something, and it's like, okay, hold on, you haven't quite earned that yet. You know, like let's learn script structure first. Like let's make sure we know how to format a script, you know, correctly. Because I know from myself personally, nothing pulls me out quicker than like bad formatting. You know, if your slug lines are in the wrong place, if you don't have action lines formatted correctly, because then it's just kind of a mess. It's just kind of a mess to read. And so, and you definitely can do that once you've earned it, you know, and like there are plenty of writers out there who just kind of have their own thing. But you definitely have to crawl before you run in certain areas. So.
I think for me, I would say, you know, at least to aspiring screenwriters or people starting out, I would say that you got to write a lot. Like you have to write more than one script. You know, I think everybody kind of has to deal with that first part when they come to LA and they're very naive. But yeah, I think like with me, you know, I was trying to push scripts that now I wouldn't have anybody read. I'd be like, oh, no, you read that? Oh gosh, that was terrible.
I'm glad they didn't read it back when we asked them to, you know.
Actually, Anthony hasn't even read my first script that I wrote.
Wow. She won't let me. It's like,
I'm like, no, it's terrible.
You read like my early Microsoft Word, like, you know, draft before like I knew what script format was. Like,
yeah. But yeah, I think that would be like my advice to people is write a lot of scripts, because when you do, you kind of start to see the flaws in your older scripts. You're like, oh, I've grown since then. And you can either, you know, put that script aside, or you can go back to it and fix it. And I think that's been one of the most beneficial things for us is like, just keep going. You know, like you have to rewrite, so don't just skip over, but like, you know, put the time and effort into the script and then move on to something else so you can keep writing, because you need to learn the craft, and I think the best way to learn it is just to keep writing. Yeah.
And I think don't be afraid to emulate too, and to find inspiration. You know, I mean, you never want to, you know, do full on like rip off, but like, you know, figure out what kind of shows you like and what kind of movies you like, but then actually ask yourself why you like them. You know, like, okay, it's funny. Well, why is it funny? Is it funny because of the dialogue? Is it funny because of the situational humor? You know, is it funny because of, you know, is it the plot itself, fish out of water, whatever it is, like that's funny about it or that's scary about it. Ask yourself those questions and figure out why you're drawn to particular filmmakers or particular writers, and then try to take those things and put it into your own, you know, do your own version of it. Basically, I think is a really, really good exercise.
Yeah, it's like they say there's only like 7 different stories and they've always been retold in different ways, you know.
Yeah.
I don't care how good I don't care how good your idea is. Like it's probably been done before.
Right,
But if you can do it differently, you know, if you can do it
differently, add in your own voice, add in, you know, you add in like your little sprinkle, little something, just a little something extra, I think is can make all the difference.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. This has been an awesome conversation. For Spotlight, you were saying we might be able to get a little promo code, right? For
absolutely.
our listeners?
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Yeah. For the About Story listeners, we'll be giving you guys your own promo code.
Sweet.
You can use. I think we'll feature that in the description of this episode.
Yes.
When you come out. So, but yeah, we would love to have you guys come check us out. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Visit us on writerspotlight.com. And you can also find Kaylah and I pretty much anywhere. You know, we're very transparent and very open with our audience and with the users on the site. So please reach out to us and let us.
Yeah, we'll give you your first round of feedback if you sign up and want us to. So, yeah.
Well, there you go, guys.
Yep.
Sign up right now. Great. Well, thank you guys so much again. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah. So thank you guys so much for watching this episode of the About Story podcast. And we will see you next time.